Employers have become increasingly desperate for workers as the U.S. economy attempts to recover from the COVID-19 pandemic. Many of these employers are offering potential hires more wages, time off, and increased benefits as the worker shortage continues to accelerate. One of the primary reasons employers have become desperate for workers is that a massive number of Americans are quitting their jobs. In August, 4.3 million people left their jobs, which is up from 4 million in July. The 4.3 million who opted to quit represent 3% of the U.S. workforce. The number of jobs quit rose the most in southern and Midwestern states, which directly correlates with the surge in Delta variant outbreaks in August. Public-facing jobs, such as those in the restaurant, hotel, and leisure industries, have been substantially hit harder than other professions. According to the Labor Department, more than 900,000 people quit jobs in these industries in August alone. Workers have cited concerns over COVID, burnout, and mental health as reasons for leaving their jobs, even if they do not have a new job lined up. Joining us to discuss is fellow at the Brookings Metropolitan Policy Program, Dr. Kristen Broady. Dr. Broady, why are all these people quitting their jobs?
So I think the first thing that we have to look at is mass mandates in states that are banning mass mandates. So if we look at states like Florida, Oklahoma, Tennessee, Texas, Utah, and others that won't even allow businesses or schools to institute a mass mandate, how do we expect people to work in these customer facing jobs when customers don't have to wear masks? You can't make them wear masks. Workers aren't wearing masks. So we're really asking these low wage workers to put themselves at risk of getting COVID. And that just doesn't make sense.
So I get that part, fear of COVID. Is there something bigger happening though, kind of a psychological shift in the labor force that people are just saying, I don't have to stay here, I can figure it out?
I think the bigger concern, I think we look at those numbers because they're out in the media now, but the bigger number is the more than 6 million people who have become discouraged and who were looking for jobs and couldn't find a job that was near them or couldn't afford childcare, or maybe the place that they used to work closed down if it was a small business and they can't find another job. Those are the people that we really need to be worried about. I think that the conservatives are really pushing this narrative of people quitting jobs. And yeah, they are, but the bigger concern is those who are looking and can't find a job. And I think that states can help out by instituting mass mandates, right? We need mass mandates. The Delta variant is still spreading. The president touted the fact that numbers were coming down at the end of September, but we're still definitely in this pandemic, and we need to do everything that we can to protect all American people, children, workers, everyone.
I absolutely agree with that. I guess I'm getting at the question of whether or not there's a mass reassessment of whether or not people want to work for poor wages.
So, of course, people don't want to work for poor wages, right? Like, we need to raise the wage. We know that the cost of college, the cost of buying a house, just the cost of living has increased and wages have not kept pace, right? But I think we also need to look at what companies are really offering. Is it just a bonus? Is it temporary? How long are they offering college assistance? Is it truly an increased wage that's going to last forever? And then the other thing is the increased wage enough to cover childcare, which we know that those costs have gone up as well. So we can't just say that wages have gone up or that companies are offering more. We need to see, are the additional wages keeping pace with the uptick in costs that consumers are seeing?
What does the workforce of the near future look like if you combine what you just described, 6 million people giving up, frustrated, can't find a job, and another, 900,000, no, I'm sorry, 4.3 million saying, I have a job and I don't want it anymore.
Yeah, so I think my research has focused on the future of work with automation, and we have seen automation increase during the pandemic, and we know that it's going to continue to increase. And so people are going to have to get used to continued learning. They're going to have to get used to working with technology. And I think people are willing to do that. But we need for companies to offer training. We need for them to partner with colleges and universities so that workers of the future can get prepared for the changing workforce. I mean, currently there are more than 30 million jobs that are at risk of being automated or changed due to automation in the next 5 to 10 years, right? So this pandemic has just accelerated that with people being able to work from home or work from home partially. And the thing is that Black and Latino people are underrepresented in those numbers. White and Asian workers are much more likely to be able to work from home than we are.
In a post-COVID world or in a middle of COVID world, is the unemployment rate now a less useful, less reliable number?
I don't think so. I think that many people, many economists would just talk about the overall U.S. unemployment rate, and I think talking about that can be useful. But the more useful thing is to look at the breakdown by race. And so I think when you just look at the overall rate, that yes, it fell to 4.8%, which sounds good. But when you look at the rate for African Americans and Latinos, we still see that we have a problem. So compared to the US rate of 4.8% in September, the rate for Black people was 7.9%, down from 8.8 in August. That's still a really, really big discrepancy. So we can't just point to the 4.8. We need to look at what it is for everybody so that we can figure out how to help everybody, not just get back to where we were before the pandemic, but to mitigate and get rid of the discrepancies that we see between the Black and white unemployment rates permanently.
People on social media put the blame. I don't know if blame is the right word, but put the burden of this kind of people quitting jobs without having new jobs on millennials. Is this really a millennial issue, or is this an across the board, across the economy, all ages kind of an issue?
This is across the board, and I think we have to remember that millennials aren't children, right? Like, I think when I hear that sometimes and when I see it on social media, it makes it seem like they're children or teenagers, and they're not. These are grown people who have families and bills to pay, just like everybody else. And people aren't just quitting jobs because they don't feel like working. That's just not how things work. People are trying to keep themselves safe, take care of their families, take care of their children, and hoping to earn a living wage that keeps up with the cost of everything else. It's not just that people just don't want to work.
Dr. Kristen Broady, thank you so much for joining me tonight. I really appreciate your time.